Hi everyone. So my name is Christina Novak. Actually, I guess my name is Christina Previtt. I just got married this weekend and my name is going to be switching, so it's going to be confusing for a little while. And I am actually one of the lead faculty that is coming on board with ICE for the proper management of older adults. So this is my first time on the ICE podcast, so I'm super excited to be here. And so I thought I would start with a little bit of an introduction of who I am, and then my podcast episode for today is 70 is the new 50. So I graduated from PT school in 2013, and I started working in kind of a CrossFit gym setting. And I worked with some older adults using a lot of classic strength and conditioning principles. And I saw just how well they did, just with general exercise strengthening. And once they finished with PT, I would discharge them into a gym-based program. And if they didn't continue with it, I would just see them again 6 to 8 weeks later once, deconditioning and, starting that reversal of some of the strength gains that they had started to come into play. And so I went back in 2015 to start my PhD on the use of strength training with older adults. So basically what my doctoral work looks at is how, as PTs, we can start implementing preventative strategies for older adults to increase their physical capacity and therefore change their functional trajectory over time by identifying people who are at risk but haven't yet established clinical geriatric syndromes. And so I'm looking at kind of preclinical disability and risk factors for frailty, things like that. In 2016, I started a clinic that basically tried to implement some of the things that I was learning in my PhD into practice, and that's how Stave Off came to be. So because of kind of all of that work, I got approached by Dustin Jones and Jeff Moore to come on board with some of the work with older adults, and I'm super excited to be here. Okay, so today I thought we would talk a little bit about 70 is the new 50. And over the last, I would say, couple of decades, we have started to see a shift in what we typically see as an older adult. And what do I mean by that? In my practice, I work in private practice, so I'm not in a hospital setting, but it's not uncommon for me now to see people in their 50s, 60s, 70s who are continuing to participate in sport, are pretty diligent about some of their exercise programs, and I have quite a few people on my caseload right now who are in their 60s and want to continue participating in things like marathons and Ironmans and triathlons and pickleball and tennis and squash. And I don't think that that's something that we would have classically seen a little bit ago in like years past. And so I think especially with this trend where we are starting to be very acutely aware of the importance of staying active and proper nutrition and sleep and stress management, all of these modifiable lifestyle factors, that we're seeing a shift in the ideologies and essentially the physical presentation of some of our older adults. And I think that was really greatly represented when the APTA in 2014, in one of their Choose Wisely campaigns, was talking about this chronic underdosing of older adults. And I kind of think that that's on me as a physical therapist, because sometimes that reflects our biases of what we think that somebody who is 60, 65, 70, 75 is capable of, and not necessarily meeting our patients where they are. And so, if we're in a hospital setting, we tend to see people who are obviously suffering from different ailments and different conditions. And over the last 5 to 10 years, in the literature, we're starting to see that we're following people over time in these prospective cohort studies, and we're seeing that there is a difference between a normal aging trajectory and an aging trajectory for somebody who is coming forward with some of these clinical geriatric syndromes. And there's a difference between these people. And I think sometimes as therapists, because we see and we're so educated on some of these clinical geriatric syndromes, that we almost take this as our normal. And so I get to see a lot of people in practice who are, along that normal aging trajectory, which means that at 70, they can still run. I have a client who's 74 who still likes to run. And I don't think it's on me to tell him that he can't, unless there is something orthopedically or something in his medical history that is telling him that he can't. And so I am kind of on the podcast today to challenge my own bias, because I think about it all the time, and say, is it what I think that a 70-year-old person can do, or is it asking the client where they were at from a baseline perspective? And so I guess what I'm talking about when it comes to some of my assessments, outside of the orthopedic tests and some of the manual concepts that we talk about a lot in other ICE courses, is in your assessments, do you actually get a functional baseline? Do we talk to some of our clients who are in their 60s and 70s and get a good idea of what they're doing in their day-to-day life? And that can be either, through a conversation and self-report. There are some amazing outcome measures, such as the Preclinical Disability and Mobility Scale, that is asking about different activities of daily living and different sports activities, and asking our clients, do they have any issues or impairments in doing any of these functional tasks? Outside of, someone's coming in because they have a sore knee or hip, for example. Or as people are coming into the clinic, are we doing functional testing with them that's appropriate for their level? And there's also things like the Seniors Fitness Test, which actually can place people into, somebody who is presenting with a clinical geriatric syndrome, a typically aging community dwelling older adult, and then actually the Masters Athlete category. And it kind of has norms and values for these different individuals based on where we would place them from our clinical perspective. And then finally, the last endnote that I wanted to kind of talk about with this 70 is the new 50 is some of the language that we use as physical therapists as we're talking with some of our older clients. When we are speaking with people who are older, we're trying to be very respectful. But over the last couple of years, what the literature is showing is that, especially with the baby boomers and things like that, they don't want to be called old. I find it almost like unnatural to say senior, because I see so much functional ability in people as they get older. And so I'm very cognizant of the words that I use and my choice of vocabulary as I'm working with older adults across the continuum. And I think we're going to see that continue to change. And I think that was one of the things that we really thought about when we said the proper management of the older adult, because just like Justin says all the time, old is not weak. And that doesn't mean that, there's something wrong. We just have to be respectful of where they are along the aging process. And so those are kind of the two clinical things that I thought I would take at the end. One is our choice of vocabulary. And the second one is, are we doing some sort of self-report baseline and functional measures so that we know where we're trying to get our client back to? All right, that is it for today. If you guys have any questions or comments for me, please feel free to message through any of the ICE platforms. You'll be seeing me alternating back and forth with Dustin on Wednesdays, because we're going to be talking everything geriatrics and older adults. And if you guys have any requests about what you want us to be talking about, these are going to be kind of teasers to the course that's coming up in January with Dustin and I leading the way. And we'll talk again soon. Bye, guys.